Columbia County, Pennsylvania is a small, nature-filled county, characterized by its various scenic mountain peaks and rivers. The county was founded in 1813 and named after Christopher Columbus. Inside Columbia County lies the borough of Centralia. Centralia had a peak of 2,761 citizens in 1890. Centralia was once home to 7 churches, 5 hotels, 14 general stores, 2 theaters, and more. Today, merely 5 people call Centralia home. Centralia was first founded as Bull's Head in 1832, named after a local tavern. It would not be renamed to Centralia until 1865. By 1854, land developers had taken note of large coal deposits in the area beneath Centralia. 2 years later, in 1856, the first 2 coal mines opened. By 1865, numerous coal mines were operating in the area and a railroad had been built to ship Centralia's coal to eastern Pennsylvania. In 1866, Centralia was officially incorporated as a borough, Pennsylvania's equivalent to a town in other states. The main industry of Centralia was, by far, coal mining. During the 1860s, several murders, including the murder of the town's founder, took place. Members of the Molly Maguires, an Irish secret society focused on organizing a union to improve coal miner wages and working conditions, were behind the murders, as well as several other incidents of arson. Local legend claims that Father Daniel Ignatius McDermott, the first Catholic priest to live in Centralia, cursed the land after he was assaulted by members of the Maguires in 1869. McDermott claimed there would come a day when the Catholic Church would be the only structure left standing in Centralia. By 1877, many leaders of the Maguires had been convicted and hanged, and their crimes largely ended. The Wall Street crash of 1929 led to 5 coal mines near Centralia closing. Illegal miners still continued to mine and shut down coal mines using an unsafe technique called pillar robbing, which led to the collapse of many of the shut-down mines in the area. Coal mining in Centralia continued until the 1960s, when most of the companies had shut down. In 1956, the state of Pennsylvania passed a law to regulate using strip mines as landfills, as it had proven to potentially cause large fires. A permit and regular inspection were required to use a strip mine as a landfill. There had been 8 different illegal dumps created in the Centralia area, and the local council created a landfill in 1962 to give people a legal place to dump their waste. The landfill was made out of a 50-foot deep strip mine that had been cleared back in 1935. The inspector, George Zachariah, noticed cause for concern in the local landfill. He had observed holes in the walls and floor, an indicator that the mine used for the landfill cut through other older mines beneath. Zachariah informed one of the local councilmen that the landfill would have to be filled with an incombustible material to prevent a potential mine fire. In early May of 1962, the Centralia Council held a meeting to discuss how the town planned to clean up the local landfill as it was getting full. The town council soon arranged for cleanup of the dump, but the procedure used was not written down. This is likely due to the fact that the method used to clear the dump, setting it on fire, was not legal according to Pennsylvania state law. On May 27, 1962, a fire was ignited to clean the dump, and water was used to put out all visible flames later that night. 2 days later, on May 29th, flames were seen once again and doused just as they were 2 days ago. On June 4th, about a week after the fire was first lit, it once again flared up. A bulldozer was brought in to stir up the trash so that firefighters could extinguish the deeper buried layers of burning garbage. A few days later, a hole 15 feet wide was discovered in the pit used as part of the landfill. The hole had been covered with garbage and was not filled with incombustible material since it was not seen. It is likely that this hole led to the Great Mine Fire, as it was connected to a labyrinth of abandoned mines underneath Centralia. Despite efforts to extinguish the fire, it continued to burn throughout June. By July 2nd, residents were complaining of the smell released from the burning landfill. Despite this fire and the complaints of residents, the town council still allowed people to dump trash into the landfill. Soon after, a mine inspector was called and used gas detection equipment to test the smoke coming from the landfill. These tests determined that the smoke contained high levels of carbon monoxide, an indicator of coal mine fires. The Centralia Council sent a letter to the coal company that owned the mines in the area to formally notify them of the fire. The council people claimed that the fire was, quote, of unknown origin during a period of unusually hot weather, likely hiding the true nature of the fire for fear that the coal company would not assist them in extinguishing the fire. On August 6th, a meeting was held at the site of the fire to further plan how to handle the issue. It was estimated that the cost of extinguishing the fire would be $30,000, equivalent to about $290,000 in today's money. On August 9th, lethal levels of carbon monoxide were found in other mines in the Centralia area, and all of the mines were closed the next day. A week later, a contract to extinguish the fire and clean the area was granted to Bridey Incorporated for $20,000, or $193,000 in today's money. Bridey Incorporated was forbidden from doing exploratory drilling to find how large and deep the fire was, and were instructed to strictly follow instructions drawn up by engineers. These engineers believed the fire was smaller and less active than it actually was, leading to Bridey being unprepared. During the excavations intended to stop the fire, many of the buried mines were breached and large amounts of oxygen were allowed to rush in, actually worsening the fire. Bridey Incorporated was also using equipment that was simply not large enough to handle the scope of the fire. To make matters worse, state law only permitted the workers to work standard 8-hour weekday shifts, giving the fire lots of time to grow and spread while the staff were not working at night. On October 29th, the project ran out of money and was abandoned, with the fire still blazing beneath Centralia. Around the time that the first project was abandoned, a second one was proposed. The goal was to mix crushed rock and water and pump it into the mines that the fire was projected to spread into, cutting off area for the fire to spread. However, during this project, Centralia's weather was unusually cold, bringing heavy snowfall and causing important elements of the project to freeze. Due to this cold winter complicating the matter, funding for the project quickly ran out on March 15, 1963, while the fire continued to spread. A third project, essentially a more thorough and robust version of the second one, was proposed but ultimately abandoned later that year due to cost constraints. After these three projects ran dry, Centralia was left to burn for the following years. Residents continued to live in the borough for many years, however, despite the growing fire. In 1979, a local gas station owner inserted a dipstick into an underground gas tank to check the fuel level. When he pulled it out, he was stunned to see that the gasoline was 172 degrees Fahrenheit, or 78 degrees Celsius. A year later, in 1980, adverse health effects from the fire began to be reported by residents. Some had low oxygen levels due to the long exposure to carbon monoxide and dioxide. In 1981, a 12-year-old resident fell into a sinkhole that was 4 feet wide and 150 feet deep that had opened in his backyard. He held onto a tree root until his 14-year-old cousin was able to pull him out and save his life. In 1984, legislation was approved by Congress to allocate over $42 million, equal to $118 million in today's money, to relocate the residents of Centralia. In 1992, Pennsylvania's Governor Bob Casey invoked eminent domain on all properties in the Centralia area. Eminent domain gives the government the power to take private property for a variety of reasons, with financial compensation being given to the property owners. In 2002, the U.S. Postal Service revoked the Centralia zip code. In 2009, formal evictions of the remaining residents began. In 2010, only 5 homes remained, with the residents left determined to keep their land and their homes. These remaining residents attempted to file lawsuits, claiming that they were victims of a, quote, massive fraud that was motivated by interest in what is conservatively estimated at hundreds of millions of dollars of some of the best anthracite coal in the world. By 2012, the last residents had lost their appeal of the court decision to uphold eminent domain. On October 29, 2013, state officials reached a final agreement with the remaining Centralia residents. The 7 residents left would be allowed to live the rest of their lives in Centralia, after which the government would take ownership of their properties. The Centralia fire also extended to a town a few miles to the south, Burnsville, which had to be abandoned and torn down. Air pressure from the heat of the fire combined with heavy rainfall to form the only geyser in Pennsylvania, known as the Big Mine Run Geyser. Ultimately, the Centralia mine fire was never extinguished and still burns to this day. At its current rate, it could continue to burn for over 250 more years. Though what I have said is the most likely and widely accepted cause of the fire, there are some other theories as to its origin. One theory states that a trash hauler dumped hot ash into the open landfill pit on May 26th, one day before the leading theory claims the fire began. This theory claims that the fire was able to spread because the town had not laid a fire-resistant clay barrier around the dump, as was required by state law. Without this clay barrier in place, the fire was able to spread into the other mines of the area. Local legend claims that the Bast Colliery coal fire of 1932, which was ignited through an explosion, was never fully extinguished and grew into the Great Centralia Mine Fire. Those who believe this theory claim that the dump fire is actually unrelated to the mine fire and that residents only noticed the mine fire as a result of trying to extinguish the dump fire. A local man, Frank Jurgel Sr., claims that he operated an illegal mine in the area between 1960 and 1962, and says that if the Bast Colliery fire of 1932 was never extinguished, he would have died from the gases released by the fire.